the second year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams.
So the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign appears to be around 603 BC. I saw something that said his reign was from 605 to 562. But what's interesting about that is it would seem like in the very first year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign would be the same time that he besieged Jerusalem. And that seems odd. As soon as he comes to power, he takes over Jerusalem. Maybe that's his first order of business. Or maybe I don't have my dates right, but that's what it appears. That as soon as Nebuchadnezzar becomes king, or as soon as he starts reigning, he besieges Jerusalem and takes it captive. And now we're in the second year of his reign.
His mind was troubled, and he could not sleep. So the king summoned the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers to tell him what he had dreamed. When they came in and stood before the king, he said to them, "I have had a dream that troubles me, and I want to know what it means."
Now from chapter 1, we know that Daniel is being trained for 3 years. And now we're just in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, so I guess that means that Daniel's training is not complete yet. But he's in the process of being trained.
Then the astrologers answered the king, "May the king live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will interpret it." The king replied to the astrologers, "This is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me what my dream was and interpret it, I will have you cut into pieces and your houses turned into piles of rubble. But if you tell me the dream and explain it, you will receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. So tell me the dream and interpret it for me."
So Nebuchadnezzar is not playing. He wants demonstration that his wise men are actually wise. That his astrologers and magicians and whatever else, soothsayers or whatever else he had, he wants to test them to make sure that they are giving him accurate advice. So he's not going to just tell them the dream and then let them give an interpretation that has no validity or no reason to believe it. So he's putting their feet to the fire to test their abilities, to make sure that he knows that he can trust them.
Once more they replied, "Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will interpret it." Then the king answered, "I am certain that you are trying to gain time because you realize that this is what I have firmly decided."
So Nebuchadnezzar had already made himself very clear. He said, "It's not going to happen. I'm not going to tell you." So I don't know why you're stalling and trying to gain time or maybe trick me into telling you something I don't want to tell you. It's not going to happen. So you better start figuring out what I told you to do.
"If you do not tell me the dream, there is only one penalty for you. You have conspired to tell me misleading and wicked things, hoping the situation will change. So then, tell me the dream, and I will know that you can interpret it for me."
He's reminding me a little bit of Donald Trump here, calling fake news. He's like, "You've been telling me the wrong thing, misleading and wicked things. I'm going to make sure that you tell me the right thing. And I'm not going to tell you. You're not going to trick me into telling you something I don't want to tell you."
The astrologers answered the king, "There's no one on earth who can do what the king asks."
So that's evidence there that the astrologers didn't even have faith in themselves. They had faith that they could give some explanation to a dream if he told it to them, but they didn't claim any supernatural powers. And they didn't think that anybody on the whole earth could do it.
"No king, however great and mighty, has ever asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or astrologer. What the king asks is too difficult."
So, magician and enchanter seems like something that is deceptive just in the title, at least in the way I understand it today. But astrologer sounds like a scientist, someone who studies the stars, the position of the stars, the movement of the stars, and even associates that with how that affects things on Earth, which may get a little hokey, but I believe there's at least something to that.
No one can reveal it to the king except the gods, and they do not live among humans.
Now that is interesting. Their concept of gods not living among humans is the idea that the gods maybe just watch from afar to see what happens on Earth. I've got a totally different concept of the one true God. I believe God Almighty lives among humans. He interacts with humans. He affects the will and decisions of humans. And he makes sure that his prophecies and his declarations and his will all come about exactly according to plan. So that's a drastic difference, not only in multiple gods to a single God, but in what kind of God he is and how he interacts with people and humans.
This made the king so angry and furious that he ordered the execution of all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree was issued to put the wise men to death, and men were sent to look for Daniel and his friends to put them to death. When Arioch, the commander...
The reason Daniel and his friends were harder to find is because they were in training. They weren't on the front lines of the wise men of Babylon. They were in training. So they would go figure out wherever they were training them.
Commander of the king's guard had gone out to put to death the wise men of Babylon. Daniel spoke to him with wisdom and tact. He asked the king's officer, "Why did the king issue such a harsh decree?" Arioch then explained the matter to Daniel. At this, Daniel went in to the king and asked for time so that he might interpret the dream for him.
So when they found Daniel in training, and Daniel found out why they wanted to kill all the wise men, Daniel was polite again. He was polite and respectful, and he's asking for permission. He's asking for time. It says he even went into the king, so he already had access to the king, Nebuchadnezzar, even though he hadn't completed his training yet.
Then Daniel returned to his house and explained the matter to his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He urged them to plead for mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that he and his friends might not be executed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon.
So, plead for mercy from God. So, I think they thought that they were dead. They probably thought there was a high possibility that this was the end of their life. That being in the wise men's chambers was not a good place to be, because there was a decree for all of them to be killed or executed.
During the night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. Then Daniel praised the God of heaven and said, "Praise be to the name of God forever and ever. Wisdom and power are his. He changes times and seasons. He deposes kings and raises up others."
So pay attention to Daniel's description of God. We should trust that Daniel knows who God is. Daniel had received visions directly from God, and we have evidence that his visions were accurate and his knowledge was good. He says that all wisdom and power belong to God, and that God changes times and seasons, and he deposes kings and raises up others. So whoever the president is, whoever the king is, whoever the sheriff is, whoever the leaders are, those are all appointed by God. The New Testament confirms this and repeats it also. But we need to understand that no matter how many people are going out to vote, God's purpose will stand. whoever God appoints will win the election, no matter what.
He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the discerning.
God gives wisdom and knowledge. It's a gift from God. We don't earn it without His assistance. He gives it to us.
He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in darkness, and light dwells with Him. I thank and praise you, God of my ancestors. You have given me wisdom and power. You have made known to me what we asked of you. You have made known to us the dream of the king. Then Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to execute the wise men of Babylon, and said to him, Do not execute the wise men of Babylon. Take me to the king, and I will interpret his dream for him.
So I think the time that Daniel had requested from the king may have spared all the wise men's life. I don't think any of the wise men were executed yet. And I don't know how much time Daniel asked for, when it was one day or what, but God revealed the dream to him. And all the wise men, I believe, were saved from execution.
Arioch took Daniel to the king at once and said, I have found a man among the exiles from Judah who can tell the king what his dream means. The king asked Daniel, also called Belteshazzar, Are you able to tell me what I saw in my dream and interpret it? Daniel replied, No wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to the king the mystery he has asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries.
I bet the Nebuchadnezzar was getting his sword ready when Daniel said nobody can do it. But then Daniel gives credit to God. He's saying there is no man that can do it, but God can do it. The one and only, all-powerful God of the Jews can do it.
He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come. Your dream and the visions that passed through your mind as you were lying in bed are these. As your majesty was lying there, your mind turned to things to come, and the revealer of mysteries showed you what is going to happen.
So he's not telling exactly when these things are going to happen, except that it's going to be in the future. It's things that were about to come.
As for me, this mystery has been revealed to me not because I have greater wisdom than anyone else alive, but so that your majesty may know the interpretation, and that you may understand what went through your mind.
So Daniel, again, is not taking credit. He doesn't want people to think that he is the one that has the wisdom. He wants to make sure everyone understands that God, the one and only God, the all-powerful God, has revealed the mystery.
Your majesty looked, and there before you stood a large statue, an enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance. The head of the statue was made of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of baked clay. While you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were all broken to pieces and became like chaff on a threshing floor in the summer. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace, but the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. This was...
Now that's obviously not some generic dream that Daniel was hoping that Nebuchadnezzar had dreamed. This is obvious. If he presented this dream to Nebuchadnezzar, and this is the dream Nebuchadnezzar had, then Nebuchadnezzar had no choice but to recognize that Daniel was truly a wise man. And since Daniel didn't take credit for it himself, he gave credit to God, then Nebuchadnezzar had to look at Daniel and see that it was Daniel's God that revealed this truth.
This was the dream, and now we will interpret it to the king. Your Majesty, you are the King of Kings. The God of heaven has given you dominion and power and might and glory.
There's another clue there that God appointed Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon. He says, He gave you dominion and power and might and glory. All these things God gave you.
In your hands He has placed all mankind, and the beasts of the field and the birds in the sky. Wherever they live, He has made you ruler over them all. You are that head of gold.
So the head of gold on the statue is Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon.
After you, another kingdom will arise, inferior to yours. Next, a third kingdom, one of bronze, will rule over the whole earth.
So I think it tells in another dream, but after the Babylonian king came the Medo-Persian kingdom, which Cyrus was the Persian king that we read about in chapter 1. And that's the silver kingdom. And the bronze kingdom was the third one, which would be Greece, Alexander the Great.
Finally, there will be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron.
That's the Roman Empire and the Caesars.
For iron breaks and smashes everything, and as iron breaks things to pieces, so it will crush and break all the others. Just as you saw that the feet and toes were partly of baked clay and partly of iron, so this will be a divided kingdom, yet it will have some of the strength of iron in it, even as you saw iron mixed with clay. As the toes were...
I'm not exactly sure what the mixture is here. It's certainly, I think, during the Roman Empire, the mixing of all the nations and the cultures, which would include the Jewish nation and the Jewish culture. I think that's what the mixture is. That's what made the kingdom weaker, was there were too many mixtures of cultures in the Roman kingdom. I don't know, maybe you've got a better idea.
Partly iron and partly clay, so this kingdom will be partly strong and partly brittle. And just as you saw the iron mixed with baked clay, so the people will be a mixture and will not remain united any more than iron mixes with clay. In the time of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed.
All right, so in the time of those kings, I think he's talking about those Caesars in the Roman Empire. In the time of the Caesars, God will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. So here, Nebuchadnezzar is certainly thinking about kingdoms as far as world domination, the strongest nation in the world. But this kingdom that Daniel's talking about is not necessarily, and I think it's certainly not, a physical kingdom. It's not the Jewish kingdom. It's not a nation that dominates the world in the same way that Nebuchadnezzar thought about it, which was physical domination. It's not the same way the Caesars thought about it, which was physical domination of the world. It's totally different. It's talking about the kingdom of Christ, and the kingdom of Christ will never be destroyed.
Nor will it be left to another people. It will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it will itself endure forever.
Forever. I think that means forever, without end. It will never be destroyed, and it will last forever. And it would come about, it would begin in the days of the Roman kingdom, the Roman Caesars. The church began in the days of the Roman kingdom. And it is the kingdom of Christ, and it will last forever. It will never be destroyed. It will never cease. There's not a new kingdom that's going to come after it. It is the kingdom of Christ that will last forever. And that has a big effect on how you understand a lot of things in the Bible, not just in Daniel, but in the New Testament. If you believe that the kingdom of Christ began during the days of the Roman Empire, and that kingdom was God's intended eternal kingdom, then it will affect how you interpret a lot of scriptures from their own. A lot of people think that we are still waiting on another kingdom, that we are waiting on another spiritual kingdom, that we're waiting for Jesus to come and establish another kingdom. But the Bible here in Daniel says that in the days of the Roman Caesars, this eternal kingdom will be established and it will never end. It will last forever.
This is the meaning of the vision of the rock cut out of a mountain, but not by human hands, a rock that broke the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold to pieces. The great God has shown the king what will take place in the future. The dream is true, and its interpretation is trustworthy. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor, and ordered that an offering and incense be presented to him. The king said to Daniel, "Surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings, and a revealer of mysteries, for you were able to reveal this mystery."
So Daniel accomplished his mission in making sure that Nebuchadnezzar understood that it was only by God's power that he was able to reveal the mystery, and not by Daniel's own wisdom and might. It was by God's power. So Daniel did a good job reflecting the glory off of himself onto God, which is where it belongs.
Then the king placed Daniel in a high position and lavished many gifts on him.
So Daniel is put in a high position, probably of the wise men. And I think Daniel also saved the lives of all the wise men. So all the wise men would immediately recognize Daniel as their leader, and Daniel as having wisdom, and Daniel as being the one who saved their lives. So they would owe him their lives.
He made him ruler over the entire province of Babylon, and placed him in charge of all its wise men. Moreover, at Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
It should have called them here Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, or whatever their names are. But it switches from Daniel, Hebrew name, to the Babylonian idolatrous names here.
Administrators over the province of Babylon, while Daniel himself remained at the royal court.
So Daniel served the king, and his three friends were administrators over the province of Babylon. So just imagine the amount of Jewish or Hebrew influence among the wise men in Babylon. You had 4 of the highest leaders of the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, or the wise men, the interpreter of all things. These were Hebrew leaders in the Babylonian kingdom. They had a tremendous influence over their wisdom and their knowledge of the future.